So I'm recording.
All right, we're in business.
Wow, I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
What a rigmarole.
Yeah,
Um,
okay.
but it worked out. How's it going?
Good. Things are great. I'm a little sick, so that's why I sound a little bit
Mm,
scratchy, but we're all good. Just kind of busy with wedding stuff, but it's
yeah,
been yeah, fairly low key though for the most part. So
that's good. When is your wedding again?
August 13th.
Oh, wow, soon.
Yeah,
That's
very soon.
exciting.
So yeah, that's very
That's
great.
so
How
beautiful.
how are you guys doing?
We're doing well. We are just kind of trucking along, trying to balance our lives.
Yeah.
We're taking our first vacation in August that I don't think we've been in 2 years, like on
Oh
a
my gosh.
personal trip.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to that. And
Good.
it'll be almost exactly, it will be literally exactly 2 years to the day that we are on this personal trip, which is kind of funny to me. But because it was August 13th, 2013.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
3 years. Okay, because it was the day after I found out I was pregnant with um, William.
Okay. Yeah.
So anyway,
Wow. Long time coming.
yeah,
Good for you.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm actually I'm looking so much forward to it that it's like I can barely stand it. It's really fun. I mean, we're just going to Chattanooga and we're just staying in a cabin. It'll be
Yeah,
awesome.
I've heard it's beautiful there,
It
actually. Yeah.
is.
Yeah, Kevin and we've been looking at that area to move to too. So,
Mm-hmm.
but it
It's
depends on jobs,
nice.
but I have heard it's beautiful. So,
Yeah, it's really nice. Well, I will just cut right to the chase since we're a little bit short on time.
okay,
I,
cool.
I just thought it would be cool. I think I have a lot of fans who've not heard your music yet. And I wanted to sort of share the story of how I met you and let you kind of talk about the album that you have that's coming out.
Sure. Yeah.
And, and a few other topics just of interest.
All right. Sounds good.
So I met Alanna. You pronounce it Alanna, correct?
Yep. Yep.
Alanna.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. I met Alanna. I met you in New Jersey, and I held a contest on my Facebook for someone to open for me for a benefit show I was doing for this place called Streetlight, which is like it's a youth ministry in Elizabeth, New Jersey that my friend is involved with. And they were having a big concert, and I was like, it would be cool to like raise awareness and maybe, So I looked for someone in the tri-state area to come and open, and you were the one that we chose based on the video that you uploaded, which
Yeah.
was so good. And
Thanks.
so you're from upstate New York,
I am. Yep.
and
Close to Ithaca. Yeah.
yep. So technically, tri-state area,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it was a really fun night, and that was where we met. And then I don't think I've seen you since then until very recently when you
Right.
came to Nashville. But my husband and I really, kept tabs on you a little bit as you've made music. So I just thought, since you have a record coming out on the 22nd,
Right.
correct?
Yep.
I
Hmm.
wanted to just talk to you a little bit about it. I'll probably put this video up on Facebook and maybe on YouTube and stuff so that my fans can hear you and kind of get acquainted and maybe check your
Awesome.
album out. So
Yeah.
first things first, you just tell us a little bit about where you're from and how you got into music. I read your recent blog entry about your story as a child, your existential
Yeah.
awakenings.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm as intelligent as you are, but I do relate to the experience of being a kid and recognizing that I existed in time and space, and it was actually quite frightening,
It's horrifying.
and still kind of
Yeah.
is. But yeah, just give us a snapshot of who you are and how you started writing songs.
Yeah, sure. Be glad to. So like I said, I was actually born in Washington State, but then grew up here in New York. Like when I was 2 months old, mom and dad moved across the country for dad's work. So grew up near Ithaca, New York, in a really rural country town. Um, and I'm the youngest of five kids. We're all homeschooled, and we had a very, for the most part, really peaceful childhood. And it wasn't overactive or anything. We just sort of read books under trees, basically, and like ran free and never combed our hair. And so it was a little bit bohemian, but in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
So and mom and dad are musical people, so there was always music going on in the home, and we all played classical piano from the time we were very young. We took lessons with this really intense, rather frightening woman named Mrs. Radmore, who was excellent,
Mm-hmm.
but she scared the blazes out of us, but she was great, and I think she gave us a real appreciation for the beauty of classical music. So we took all of us took lessons with her up until like leaving for college basically, and I picked up the guitar when I was around 15, and that's when I started writing songs. And it was actually kind of a surprise that I could actually write lyrical music. I had only ever played classical and like baroque and rather heavy pieces on the piano, and I'd never actually written a folky tune. But I listened to a lot of folk music in my teenage years, so it was really neat when that actually happened. Around 15 or 16, started writing music and performing, and then through college, I continued to write and perform. And at the urging of a lot of friends, I launched a Kickstarter and recorded my first EP, and then another album after that, and then finally this third one. So it's just kind of been a very gradual process of like doors opening one after the other, and people being really generous and reaching out and inviting me to come and play. And so that's, yeah, I mean, that's kind of a truncated version of what's happened and what's led me to be here. But hopefully that gives an idea
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
backdrop. Yeah. So,
Well, this might sound like a redundant question, but I don't believe it is. Why do you write music?
I think it's kind of a multi-layered purpose and reason. I mean, I part of it is because it helps me process things, and because like I feel that I must, like I have to, and I think I would write music even if my cat was the only being that listened to it.
Mm-hmm.
Which some of my songs, my cat is the only one who has heard them, but like it is part of a processing thing, and it's a very I don't know how to describe it, but I feel like I have to write and get things out that way. But also, it in a more existential way, it's because I crave to be known and loved, and I crave to connect with other people.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think that's the most bare bones way of answering, because I crave to be known, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like to just bear that in that way, I guess, to create something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So when you perform your songs, which are not, strictly speaking, overtly religious,
Hmm.
um, what do you find to be the most transcendent part of that? Do you, I guess I'll put it this way: between writing, performing, and then meeting people and all the things that come with doing this,
Hmm.
um, where do you feel the most transported?
Mm. That's an interesting question. No one's ever asked that question in that specific way. I don't know. I think the writing process is it's kind of a flow zone experience. People have TED talks about getting into the flow zone.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very effortless thing that happens. And then when I'm performing, it's very peaceful, like super peaceful for me, and I feel very at ease and like refreshingly free from, I guess, like the burden of time. Like I'm not aware of future worries or past anxieties. It's just like a very present thing as I'm singing. But I think like the most meaningful part is afterwards, like how people will come up after performance and they'll want to talk, and it's very beautiful and humbling the way people approach. I think us as musicians or whoever's created something, like, we're all craving that kind of connection. And so after a show, I think that's the part I love the most.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I know it's the part I love the most is that the fact that everything begets itself and vulnerability begets more vulnerability. And so, yeah, that's been the most like
Mm-hmm.
face melting, edifying, life changing part of writing music and singing it is the connectiveness afterward.
Mm-hmm.
So,
That's so
yeah,
fascinating because I feel like everybody is so different in that way. There are people
yeah,
who absolutely cannot talk to anyone for 45 minutes after they finish because
hmm,
they're too,
right,
in another
yeah,
headspace. And there are people that can't wait to get out there and talk to people face to
right,
face and hear their
hmm,
stories. And, you know, people are often curious as to why I don't go out after I play
hmm,
because it completely overwhelms me and I don't know how to. I go into this kind of shutdown mode where I look at people and I'm talking to them and I'm going like this.
Yeah.
and they're talking to me, and I can't even. And it's so
Yeah.
fascinating. Like, would you consider yourself an extroverted person, even though you're so quiet?
No, no, that's the funny thing about it is like I'm classically an introvert and an INFP as people, I
Yeah,
mean,
that's what I am as well.
whatever that means, it's a lot more nuanced, I guess. But yeah, like, um, usually I feel energized by, yeah, time alone and restfulness, like peaceful conversation with like one person or maybe two. But it's different. That's with public speaking or singing or talking to people after. I am like super energized and
That's so
excited.
interesting.
It's a departure from the norm for me. I don't know why it happens that way, but
So it must
yeah,
be very freeing in that way then.
it is. Yeah, yeah. I mean, when I'm singing, like my mom always used to tell me when I was first starting to perform, she's like, "You need to look up and lock eyes with people as you're singing." I was like, "I cannot do that." Like because it's just there's something so intimate about singing. If you're singing at someone, you're going to be
Yeah,
like it's just too much. So
yeah.
like in that way, I close my eyes and I'm singing, and it's just a very focused, peaceful thing. And I could be singing for one person, and I could be singing for 10,000. But afterwards, yeah, I feel open and
Hmm.
excited, which is strange. But yeah, that's how it is. So, mhm.
So tell me about this record, what it's called, what it's sort of dealing with, and what kind of process you went through.
Mhm.
Like is this your second project, technically?
So it's like my third full
Okay.
length, or it's like
So,
my second full length album, third
okay.
project. Yeah, yeah.
So
So
at this stage in the game, how is this different? And so what are you hoping that it kind of conveys, you know?
sure. So the album is called Champion, and it has 11 tracks on it. All of which I wrote except for this one. The title track, Champion, is actually a really old Zambian song of unknown origin. I wrote the second verse for it. Um, but I recorded it in Nashville in March. And it's funny because it's a mixture of some songs that were written a long time ago and some songs that are a lot more recent. But I think there's a cogency in it in the fact that it's I guess vulnerable sometimes feels like a trite word. It's used a lot, but it is a little bit more frank and more. It's closer to the pulse of things, at least from where I'm coming from. And one of the ways that it's different from my other records is that when I got into the studio, I said to Alan Parker, who wonderful guy that I produced it with, I let him know like I think shrink wrap is overrated for this record and for my life. Like I've tried it before and it takes a lot of effort to shrink wrap things. So I wanted the music to sound just like it would sound if someone was sitting there live with us playing it. So for each track, all of us, the handful of musicians I had, we all got into this big room and we recorded everything
Mm-hmm.
live. And then we would go back over, and sometimes someone would tweak something and add another track over it. But yeah, I wanted to capture a very frank and raw sound. It's imperfect, but I think it's more genuine for how I sound as a musician in person.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and it's some of the songs, the more recent songs, came out of some really devastating uh, things that happened in my life in the past 2 years, which have actually ended up to being the most transformative and life giving places of my life. In retrospect, it's funny. A friend of mine once said to me in college, he said, God's timing always seems to suck until you realize that it doesn't. And like, there's no good time for bad news or pain to descend in your life. But I have found when I look back, I often thank God for some of the things that seemed very dark and dismal at the time, because out of those places have come a lot of new life. So that might sound kind of meta and obscure, whatever, but I feel like everybody is going to be able to pick up some thread of how that's happened in their life.
Mm-hmm.
So so Champion deals with some of those things that have happened and the beauty that's come. And I tried to avoid being sentimental and shrink wrappy, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm very happy with how it turned out. And it's pretty stripped down and simple, but yeah, I'm excited about it. So yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah.
Do you find sentimentality difficult to avoid?
Ah, I mean, in some ways, I think I've been on guard against it from a young age,
Mm-hmm.
and I despise it when I see it in myself. But because I never want to just be an evoker of emotion or just like be seeking these emotional highs and lows just for the pleasure that I get from that. So kitsch and sentimentality are the things that I ponder a lot and wonder how they actually affect me in my own life too. But I think, yeah, if I'm honest, I think it is hard to avoid sentimentality a lot of the time. But I try to be on guard against it, and look out for it where it is, and seek
Yeah.
a genuine kind of encounter experience, not.
Hmm.
So I hope that makes sense. I don't know.
I think
Yeah.
so. I think that I don't think a lot of people are actively looking out for sentimentality in their own writing, and it can be defined. I mean, it
Yeah.
has an objective definition, but it can be kind of, there are different connotations to that for people. Some
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
find the word sentimental to be a positive word, and some people don't think of it
Yeah.
as,
It's
a
true.
positive word. And the best way I would, or the way that I would describe it, my impression, my personal connotations from sentimentality are, pictures where the source of light is not identifiable, where uh, everything is illuminated but nothing is shaded, and it's sort of very one-dimensional picture of human existence. And
Yeah.
I find that it is difficult to avoid because we often do not know when, experiencing things in life and then trying to process them into literature, writing, or art. It's difficult to paint pictures that adequately depict that. It's hard,
Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
takes a lot of introspection and a lot of digging and a lot of integrity in how you put those things down in the medium that you're using.
Totally.
And in my few years that I was in sort of the more mainstream Christian music industry, I found it very difficult to avoid because no one else was really trying to avoid it.
Yeah.
And
Sure.
so when I would work with people in, whether they'd been producers or writers or label
Mm.
executives, it wasn't even a value on the list of values, to avoid that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So as I began to be increasingly dissatisfied in general there, that was one of the biggest reasons, because I felt like I was not being permitted to paint humanity with a realistic brush. It was
Yeah.
always kind of understood and or implicitly or explicitly said to me that I had to make things digestible.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious, what would you say about this record, lyrically or musically
Mm-hmm.
or whatever? Are there any choices you made that felt brave in that way, like where you're sort of actively avoiding whitewashing something, or and I mean, I think that certainly choosing to record it the way you did could be a decision like that.
Mm-hmm.
Letting your own humanity shine through in the imperfections of recording, I think that's an example of a choice like that.
Yeah.
Although I don't think that all music has to be that way, I do think it can be a very
Yeah.
hard place to hide in that kind of
Right.
format. But
Yeah.
lyrically, like, what are some things that jump out at you about your lyrics on this record, like really being as human as they could be?
Right.
What sticks out to you in your body of
Um,
work?
well, I just wanted to, like, to your point about how easy it is to sentimentalize things, or sentimentalism in art. Like, it makes me think of there's this wonderful philosopher. He's current. You might have heard of him, Roger Scruton. He talks a lot about sentimentality and kitsch, and he talks about kitsch being, sometimes kitsch can actually become a parody of itself, to the point of like a figurine of like Michael Jackson holding his chimpanzee bubbles or something, his little monkey, and it's just there for no reason other than to evoke like a sicky sweet feeling, and it doesn't really give the full gamut of human existence. Like, that's why I'm really drawn to writers like Tolstoy, and I know you've
Mm-hmm.
mentioned him before,
I love
and
Tolstoy.
yeah, I'm crazy about him, and that's part of the reason, is because he does show a pretty frank and honest depiction of both the goodness and the nobility of the human heart, as well as the depravity of it, and the way that everybody has a bit of both inside of them. And for me, the greatest moments of conversion that I've had in my life have been when another person has either shared with me, like, that they understand a flaw or a sinfulness, or a part of my sinful heart that they identify with, while looking at me with eyes of hope.
Mm-hmm.
And like that's where true conversions happen. It hasn't been like when someone says like, well, here's what you ought to do, period. Like that doesn't seem to be a full enough picture. It feels it's nicer and it's tidier,
Mm-hmm.
but it feels like you're putting on rubber gloves before you're actually like embracing someone. And I don't know. Um, I know that there are parts of my own heart that are pharisaical like that, even still, though. As much as I prefer to live a life that's more raw and authentic, there's still some of that in me, too. But with this record, to that question, I think as far as like a lyrical approach or the way that it was recorded, um, I do know that my mind was in a different place when I was recording this one, and like with my other records, I was trying to cater to what I thought people would like to hear, and things that would keep their feet tapping and like make them press, rewind again and again. I kind of wanted it to be a little bit more like ear candy, I think, and so I was trying to do that, and also trying to jump all over different genres to show that I could do this and be really versatile. And that felt very brave at the time, but now looking back, I realized that I was I was trying to cater and pander to like a simpler side or just something that was easier for people to approach and handle. And I wasn't really actually revealing myself very much at all. So I think with this latest album, I don't know how brave it actually is. I can't really say. I have no idea. But I do know that my mind was in a different, much more peaceful, simple place. And I don't know. I do care what people think, of course. Like I'm not going to pretend that I don't. But I feel less fettered to that. And when I recorded this, I just recorded the way that the songs came into my mind. Sometimes just one strict take, nothing but me on a creaky stool and the guitar, and that's okay. Some people love that kind of stuff, and that's great. Some people don't, and that's okay too. But yeah, and lyrically, I think people will listen to these songs and they will sense that there's some heavier themes that I'm digging into. A lot of my music's kind of metaphorical, but it is autobiographical at the same time, and it's drawn from things that have actually happened.
Yeah.
So, does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Hopefully that wasn't too rambly. I don't know.
No. What is one of your favorite lyrics on the record?
On the record, I love the song "Pem." That I actually wrote that when I was in college, and I never would sing it for anyone except for my cat Caitlin, who's since passed. God rest her feline animating principle, whatever that is. But
her fap, yeah.
yeah, yes, exactly. You know about the fap.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do love Pem because that does tell a tale about a couple people in my life that were very near and dear to me. And there was a great struggle for all of us to be transparent and real with each other. And again, that probably sounds kind of obscure, but take it for what it is. But yeah, that one's very dear to me. And then the last song on the album, called "The Tension," is also very dear to me. And it's kind of about the tension between men and women, and how it's also inspired by this obscure. You've probably heard of this poem by John. Is it John Donne? The "Batter My Heart, Thou Three-Person God."
I love that. So
great. Yeah, it's one of my favorites too. And when I first read it years ago, I was struck by it. And I think about that a lot, the idea of God battering my heart and breaking it down and beginning again. So that's also in the tension that was going on in my brain with the refrain. And marital love, very often, I think, based on my experience with engagement, which has been a real illuminative scrub down, I think marriage is probably a continual battering of the heart in the best possible way. You just begin again. Lord, by your grace, let us begin again, So I think those things can be woven together. But
awesome.
Yeah.
So, I suppose. So, just tell us where people can, hear your music, find you on whatever it is that you do, Twitter and Facebooking.
Totally. Yeah.
If any of that.
Right. Yeah. So it'll be available for digital download on iTunes on July 22nd. And then I'll have physical copies for sale through my store or through my website, which is Alanna-Boudreaumusic.com, I believe. So I'm going to set up a little store out of my house, and I would love for people to get the physical copy because there is a lyrics booklet, and that just I'm all about that tangible experience of being able to read along with the album. I love doing that. I've done that with
Mhm.
your albums actually. Just sit down with the lyric book and listen to every song and read along, digest it as a whole. I don't.
Oh,
I'm
that's
just
awesome.
I'm all for that, you know. So,
Yeah, I love
and
that.
then yeah, and then I'm on Instagram. Um, and Twitter I haven't used for quite a while, but I'll try to get better about that. And I do have a Facebook page that I update very regularly. So
Okay.
if people type in Alanna Boudreau, they'll find me on there and
Okay.
YouTube. So
Okay,
yeah,
well, perfect. Well,
yeah.
I am excited to hear it. I have not heard it yet, but my
Okay.
husband's been listening. He said it's really good, so
Oh, great. Thanks.
I will be checking it out. And if people haven't already looked, there are a few live videos of songs that you've put out recently, which my husband
Yes.
shot, and
Mhm.
I engineered the audio, which was a first for me. Big learning curves. Took me a little too long to finish, but
That's okay.
but we did it, and they're coming out on your YouTube like
Yeah.
up until the record release, and one of
Yeah.
those songs is Pem, and so
Yes.
people will be able to hear that, see you
Yeah.
sing it, and anyway, I really appreciate your time, and I'm
Yeah.
excited
Thank you.
to
Yeah.
introduce people to what you do, and
Yeah. Thanks so much.
best of luck with your release.
Thanks, Audrey.
Yeah,
Yeah. Really appreciate it.
yeah,
So,
I'll talk to you later.
all right.
Bye,
Adios.
Alana. See ya.
Bye.